Hello, class. Here we go again. We're on session 9, part 3, and we're going to talk today about Dwight D. Eisenhower. Now, Eisenhower's our 34th president. He's a Republican. Eisenhower was the World War II general. Remember, he was the planner of D-Day. Eisenhower will be our president for 8 years. And I do get a lot of Ike papers. The interesting thing about Eisenhower's administration, guys, is he's 62 years old when he takes office. Eisenhower's not a young guy, and he does have pre-existing health issues. Eisenhower was a chain smoker. During World War II, the man could smoke 2 to 3 packs of cigarettes a day. Interesting story I always tell my students about Dwight D. Eisenhower is the fact that, first of all, him and Harry Truman were actually friends before he ran for office, because Truman assumed Eisenhower was going to run under the Democratic ticket. The reason that Truman didn't know, Eisenhower was not even a registered voter until he registered to run for the president. Now, that seems very, to most of us, kind of odd and maybe unpatriotic that a guy that had never even voted is going to register and then run for the presidency. Eisenhower was a professional soldier, guys, and in his day, soldiers did not get involved in politics, and a lot of them did not even claim any party. Eisenhower will fall under the Republicans, which kind of puts a rift between him and Truman. Eisenhower had a couple of really quick campaign promises. Number one, Eisenhower said, I'm going to get us out of this Korean conflict. And he did. As soon as he is elected office, Eisenhower gets us out of Korea. Now, the interesting thing about Eisenhower, guys, is Eisenhower will be our president for 8 years, 2 terms. And the thing I always like to point out, guys, it will be 8 years the United States is at peace. We will not go to war during the 2 terms of Dwight D. Eisenhower. Very important. Eisenhower had seen war. He had been in war. He knew what war would do. And his administration said, guess what, guys? We're not going to any wars. Now, Eisenhower will be responsible for the interstate system. Today, when you drive on the interstate system, you can thank Dwight D. Eisenhower. Eisenhower had been in Europe. He had seen how the Germans had built the Autobahn. Under that, he decides to go in and build the interstate system. I want to mention to you also, it's important, they will be under Dwight D. Eisenhower, that Brown versus the Board of Education. That is some of the first times at schools that had been segregated that will break that up. If you write an Eisenhower paper, you've got lots of domestic and foreign policy. His big thing, obviously, domestic policy was going to be, he'll be one of the first presidents that will address some civil rights. He's got the interstate system. That is very good, and it helps our country out. Now, what about, we talked about his foreign policy and the fact that we didn't go to war. It's kind of interesting, guys. Dwight D. Eisenhower, every president will deal with the Russians and the Cold War differently. Remember, Truman had kind of a containment policy. Truman was willing to send troops in to Korea to try to stop that advancement. So Truman, under Truman's administration, remember, he had the Marshall Plan. Under Dwight D. Eisenhower, he deals with the Soviets totally different. And what I'm fixing to tell you, a lot of my students who may not think they want to write an Eisenhower paper, when they hear this story, they're like, I like this guy, okay? Eisenhower told the Russians, basically, look, guys, if y'all do anything, your fault, my fault, anybody's fault, and I'm paraphrasing this, of course, we, the United States, will react with massive retaliation. We will send every nuclear bomb we have. We will load our planes down. We will fly everything we have. We will drop every weapon of any type of massive nuclear destruction. We'll drop it into Russia. So if you mess with us, we will level Russia. And you know what, guys? The Russians understood this. In my favorite Russian accent, they said, Comrade, we understand. There is no problem between the Soviets and Americans. There you go. It worked. Was Eisenhower ever planning to do that? I don't think so. Eisenhower, why did the Russians believe him? Guys, the Russians had a lot of respect for Dwight D. Eisenhower. He had been a general. He had fought in the Second War. He was the planner of Normandy. The Russians really respected Eisenhower. He's just old, chiseled general, and by golly, they respected him. Now, something interesting about Eisenhower is all of his health issues, guys. In September of 1955, Eisenhower will suffer a heart attack while he's on vacation. November of 1954, he will have a stroke. Eisenhower, during the last terms of his administration, suffered from Crohn's disease. Eisenhower had more medical issues than maybe any president we knew about. But the thing about it is, guys, Eisenhower never held these issues from the public. He always told them. You got to remember, Eisenhower is an older man. He'd been under tremendous stress, and he has lots of health issues, okay? By the time, if you'll look at, there's a picture on your PowerPoint, a slide of Eisenhower meeting JFK at the steps of the White House. It's a famous picture, and the thing I want you to get out of that picture, when you look at the slide, and the picture says age versus youth. Eisenhower, at the time of spending 8 years as our president, if you look at Eisenhower, he looks like Grandpa. He's an old guy. He's bald-headed. And he looks like your granddad. He's this old, wrinkled-up guy, and he had already had a stroke and a heart attack, and he had Crohn's disease, and he lost a lot of weight, and he just looked old. You know, he's a nice guy. I mean, he's like your granddad. You love him. Then you see JFK. He's young. He's vigor, and that's what really attracted America. You had this young man that had all this vigor about him, and he is JFK, and he will be our next president. So we will end this lecture after we've talked about Dwight D. Eisenhower. Remember, if you write an Eisenhower paper, remember, he creates the interstate system. Brown versus Board of Education, segregation changes, okay? He does all that. Massive retaliation. Probably the important thing out of the Dwight D. Eisenhower administration, guys, is we will have 8 years that the United States will not go to war. We will not send our young men off to foreign lands to die, because Dwight D. Eisenhower was that old chiseled general. He had been to war. He had saw what war was, and under his administration, he did not want that. Now, we'll talk about some of the things he planned to do, but he didn't do. That's kind of interesting. So we end this on Dwight D. Eisenhower. Again, I think he was a pretty good guy. I like Ike was his campaign slogan. And you may decide to write an Eisenhower paper. If you do, I get a lot of them. So with that said, guys, we'll end this session. We will come back, and then we will talk about JFK, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. See you guys later. Bye.